welcome everyone to another edition of Remixing Politics and Culture with me, your host, Pam. I am a public relations and marketing professional with a passion for social justice, voter advocacy, and culture. And tonight, we have two special guests, two young women who are running for city council for one of the hottest cities in America, Raleigh, North Carolina. Raleigh, North Carolina is on so many best of lists. Several tech firms are moving into the area, including Apple. Apple is actually going to build its first East Coast campus here in Wake County. With so much rapid growth in Raleigh and its surrounding areas, the good also presents some problems that need solutions. And these dynamic young women want the opportunity to be the solution providers. I'm first going to bring up Mary Black. Hey there, Mary.
Hi, good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm doing well tonight. How are you?
I'm doing great. So let me introduce you. Mary Black is running for District A for the Raleigh City Council. She wants you to know that she's an advocate and not a politician. Mary has always been passionate about the environment and earned a degree at North Carolina A&T University in Greensboro, North Carolina. She currently serves on Raleigh's Environmental Advisory Board and works full-time as a climate educator with the Chisholm Legacy Project. Mary fully recognizes that Raleigh, North Carolina is one of the fastest growing cities in the South and that it is at a critical moment in history. She knows that she can be one of those visionary leaders to shepherd the city through this progressive time. And next, I'm going to bring up Zainab Baloch. And correct me if I mispronounced your name. Did I do that?
Yeah, Zainab Baloch.
Zainab. That's easy,
Yeah.
Zainab. Believe it or not, Mary did tell me that, and I got it messed up anyway. But it's good that you also go by ZB.
I do.
Well.
I also go by ZB, so that works.
Right. Okay. So Zainab Baloch, also known as ZB, is running for District B for the Raleigh City Council. She is the co-founder of YAP, a civic innovation startup bringing together community builders, organizations, Zellenials, to remix strategies to increase civil engagement, amplify ethical solutions, and support individual happiness. ZB is a former and current Raleigh City Council candidate and was the youngest woman of color and first Muslim to run for mayor in the South. Welcome, ladies, to the show. Thank you for coming. I so appreciate having you. And before we get started in any of the questions, I want to give you guys an opportunity, one at a time, to speak very briefly about your program. Also, hold on one second. Let me get to the comments. Those people that are on YouTube, I have dropped the link that you can, if you're not a YouTube member per se, you can use the link to participate in the show and ask Mary and ZB questions, okay? So I want you each to talk a little bit about your platform. And Mary, I'll go with you first. Just talk briefly about your platform and we'll go from there.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Mary Black. I'm running for Raleigh City Council in District A. As Pam mentioned, I am coming out of a climate and environmental advocacy background, is that is what's bolstering me to be a young woman that is running for office. A lot of my platform is built around me being an advocate and not a politician, because I am also coming to this from the climate and community advocacy space. My platform is built around the idea that everyone in the city can thrive, where THRIVE is an acronym for trusting, healing, resilient, intersectional, visionary, and engaged. So just how are we establishing, discussing, and thinking about the future of Raleigh, where all residents have the ability to thrive, whether it's environmental climate justice, racial justice, economic justice, or what have you. It's the conversations that I think we need to start having now. It's a very critical election into the future of what our city is going to be looking like. So I'm going to pass the mic on over to my good friend, Zainab Baloch.
All right, Zainab, tell us your pitch.
Honestly, I had no intentions to run this election. I've run 2 times before. I've run for mayor of Raleigh in 2019. I ran for Raleigh City Council in 2017. And it was not in my goals or visionary plan to run for office again this time. But seeing what has happened the past 3 years, because council has decided to give themselves the extra year, they voted themselves an extra year in council for themselves, and seeing kind of really the massive increase in the corruption back end deals, like it just really like moved me to run again in this district and be able to run in the place where I grew up in, District B, and be able to, have an impact and voice for the whole city, even though it is a district. So, I just see this whole talk of like there's this housing crisis and this climate crisis, and we're talking about these crises, but it's like the people in power are talking about it. Like you have the tools and mechanisms to do something about it, and you're not. And so I think that's why this election is so important, to where we're having a lot of community builders and organizers running to be able to literally turn over the leadership of this city and to be able to create a city that everyone talks about, but no one takes action to build. So it's why I decided to run as, a young woman, as someone who really just cares about my hometown, but also really cares about the fact that like we are not treating people and caring for people the way we need to be, and our local structures and institutions can do that.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. So all of my questions we're going to take it one at a time. The same question for each of you. The first one is, how will you address the complaints from the Raleigh residents when the city council dissolved the citizen advisory councils, the CACs, that's been in existence for 50 years? Mary, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, so this was a huge blow when it happened. I know people personally who were going to be presidents of their CACs, and then it was just like they were gone and disbanded, and there was nothing really in place for several years around like engaging the community in a city where we are losing trust and we are losing ways of engagement. So, and they have created a board, and I think that is, a step in the right direction. But I've been on a city board. I was on the environmental advisory board. And one of the things that I do notice, being that I was the youngest and only Black woman on the board, is how extremely siloed these boards can be. And I think at this point in time, it is representing community members that are really active members of their community. But the whole aspect of the CACs were to engage the large numbers of members of the community, and a lot of the issues around the engagement process have not been figured out, like the times that they were meeting and having hybrid sections and just being able to go into communities and have conversations with people. I think is something that's still missing in the way the city is choosing to pick up the community engagement several years after the fact of disbanding these organizations that have been around for years. So something that I've been thinking is kind of giving the board more ways to engage with the community, because the boards can be extremely siloed, like ensuring that they actually are engaging, like bringing back CACs, specifically CACs that represent the city that has been deeply gentrified in the last 2 years, communities that have been traditionally African-American, immigrant, Muslim are changing. And so how are we representing that in the flow of how the city is being represented as far as community engagement, and also making sure that the board is engaging with those large swaths of the community, and rather it just being like 8 or 9 people that are representing the whole city as far as community engagement goes. So just opening up those lines of transparency, and then like creating something that really actually reworks some of the like issues that were wrong with CACs to begin with, as we're creating like equity and more conversations and transparency within the community. I think that is the first step. We're headed in it, but there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, from what I read, there is a whole lot to be done. ZB, what do you think about that with the CACs? What do you think about your community and them wanting to have involvement, to have say in what the city council is doing?
Yeah, this is a two-pronged question. So like I grew up really like, in North Raleigh and building that as a community, but I attended the Islamic Association of Raleigh. And so there was a huge, group of Muslim community that I had where I went to school and,
Mhm.
kind of but then after that, like just engaging in the youth community as well as just various other communities. So I feel like I have a really good grasp of a diverse and multi-ethnic communities. And from what I heard was, I think it's important to remember how CACs were put into place, right? Like the city, Clarence Leitner, who was the city's first Black mayor, is the one who, really put in CACs into existence. And they were supposed to be working on housing, transportation, and government accountability. And they were put into place in 1974. And
Mhm.
so from there, it was like really having a formal structure that allowed like a formal citizen participation structure, and
Right.
it allowed people to be involved in that decision making process. But one of the main things was when developers or neighbors came to present construction plans, the group voted on whether to approve them or not. So what this really did, more than anything, was remove that say that residents had in development ordinances, new development, etc. So doing that, cutting CACs during a pandemic,
Mhm.
where people were virtual, there's less ways to engage, was I think one of the worst things you could do. And I think it's also important to remember that the city council gutted CACs without any community engagement. So like it's really ironic that a measure to preserve community engagement happened without any community engagement at all. um,
Right.
and so it's just very, we really can't call these coincidences. They're intentional. People
Mhm.
did their development. Raleigh's it's a hot city. People want to develop here nationally, internationally.
Mhm.
It's not just national anymore. We have international developers coming into Raleigh, second biggest tech hub in the country. So it's a place where people who are more aware of their local decisions and seeing how development can impact the people already living here are a hindrance to the wealthy developers that are pretty much colonizing our city. So getting rid of CACs, I think, it did get rid of the only formal citizen engagement process in the city. We are the only city of this size in the whole country that has no formal community engagement process, and that should be something that alone should be something that everyone should just be pissed about and like not be okay with. And it's just astonishing to me that we've come this far, and yet after spending tax money on trying to figure out a community engagement process, all we got was a form. And so it's just at the end of the day, like it's not about like, oh, we don't have a solution, we don't have another way to engage people. It's just that it's not a priority, and not even that's not a priority. We don't want to engage people because we need this. City councilors need this development to go on. They need to be able to continue the corruption that's happening in the city and making these back end deals with developers and displacing the residents of the city who were the ones who built the city to what it is. So for me, it's just that it's not that it's an unsolvable problem. It's just that we don't want to solve it and we don't want it.
Right, right. Joshua Bradley, I don't want to ignore his question. He says, what are you most looking forward to about your campaign this upcoming election season?" So that'll be for both of you. And so Mary, I'll shoot that to you first. Joshua's question.
Thanks for the question, Josh. Well, I am a first time candidate, so I think there's a lot to be looking forward to as a young person who's just really interested in engaging in social justice and political action. So I'm really excited about diving more into that political power as a young woman, as a young Black woman. But and also just like the conversations that are taking place in many forms. I am just often like amazed at some of the things I hear on the campaign trail through canvassing, working in the collective of people that are also running for city council across the city is also very exciting. If you don't know, we have a wave of like very progressive, truly good candidates that are running for the future of Raleigh, happening all across the city in all different districts. So meeting and engaging and interacting and building with those candidates has been also very fun for the future that we all want to have collectively. So that's just a few of the things, but there's so much to do. There's so much to learn, and I think I've been enjoying this process of learning and engaging and building over the last year. So, and more excitement into the future and what can happen, when we win.
All right. That's right. ZB, what do you think? How do you want to answer Joshua's question?
Honestly, like as someone who ran for mayor last time, I'm looking forward to like getting Marianne Baldwin out of office. I really think that leadership reflects the direction that the city goes into and the way that we care for people. And so one of the reasons that I also came in this election was to uplift the issues that no one's talking about, but also to be able to talk about the corruption and the injustices committed by this city council and specifically the mayor, and how having a corrupt leader in place running the city has literally exacerbated the problem in just 3 years. So I'm looking forward to, just kind of having a little bit of, I call it fun, but really it's more about like, people actually being engaged and passionate about local issues. And that comes from knowing all of the injustices done by the city council, while also allowing us to propose new solutions and new ideas. So another thing that I'm excited about is bringing to the forefront on a lot of the issues and work that organizations are already doing in Raleigh that are not being listened to by city council. Or for example, like, an organization like Refund Raleigh was called like, just crazy by a city councilor. And so like, just having that type of language by our city councilors when people and organizations are speaking up, I think is, it's just there's a layer of the problem. But I think for me, just seeing a coalition, like Mary said, of community builders and organizers that are literally like in a position to overturn this entire council and become a council that cares for people first and profit not first at all, and not making those back end deals is really what I'm kind of excited to bring to the forefront. And this is my third time running for office, is just why I feel like I'm taking the messaging a little bit differently, because I do have lots of ideas and solutions that I've proposed for the past 5 years, but I do think that there needs to be a strong voice speaking out against the corruption currently happening in council as well.
Okay. All right. Okay, this is a two-pronged question. Everybody knows that the area is hot. We're fortunate to be in a hot area, right? To get the development and all of that. But do you think that we can be pro-development and balance it off also with affordable housing? You think it's possible, Mary? To balance, to do both, to welcome in the new developers into our city, and also be able to provide affordable housing?
Well, I'm gonna let Zainab go first because I saw you come off camera or off mute first. So go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I feel like people always pose those things as separate versus like, hey, why can't developers just be like, hey, like half of our development is going to be affordable housing or housing for low income residents, right? Like that is a decision that developers could make from like, the goodness of their heart, or city council can decide not to prioritize those developments, right? Like we always point to the fact, we always point to the fact that there's this state law that says, we can't force developers to build affordable housing, but we can make it more difficult. We can say no, be like, hey, this development doesn't fit the needs of our strategic plan that includes building affordable housing for the fact that we have less Section 8 housing than we did 50 years ago.
Exactly.
So it is up to our counselors to be like, well, I think so many times I've heard all our counselors be like, we can't force developers to build anything, but it's like, but you can make it more difficult, or on the other hand, you can incentivize developers who are going to build affordable housing. Again, not an unsolvable problem. It's not a priority. We don't want to build affordable housing because the people we want in our city, we want them to be wealthy, or the tech bros, or whatever we want, and so I think for us to know that rent went up 50% in 1 year. I don't know any other city that has happened in just 1 year, and that is, I have to say, truly due to the fact that Apple and Meta are coming here. And so I think it's important to recognize what the state level does to Raleigh and Durham, because it is Governor Cooper who brought in these tech companies and pushed so hard for them to come here. So
right.
I
But
think
we can, but I refuse to accept that we cannot do both. We can chew gum and walk at the same time. Come on. You can just as you incentivize with tax breaks and what have you, you can incentivize that in another way, because listen, we don't look any better if we have more and more homeless encampments around town. And it's just absolutely ridiculous to what our housing situation is. It makes no sense. It absolutely makes no sense. I think, ZB, we talked on the phone about my little experiment in housing for a friend of mine, and I almost passed out. I did not know that the houses around me were going for that much money. I had no earthly clue. And it's I don't know how people are going to make it.
It's disgusting.
It is depressing. It really is. It really is. How do you, I don't know how. Do you guys have any direct ideas on how to create affordable housing in Raleigh, Mary? Have you thought of any ideas on that?
I think a large part of it is what Zainab was saying, just prioritizing the aspect of having affordable housing in the city. And right now we have a city councilors that are more like backed by developers, and they're backed by the idea of like what they can create for people and making it not sustainable for people here. We have nobody that's actually prioritizing really truly the development of public housing, of houses that are priced at 30% AMI. We're just not, specifically in my district. And I understand that like reality of just waking up one day and all the houses next door are like close to $1 million.
Yes.
And you are trying to figure out how you're going to be able to sustain as a young person, in my case, first wanting to live here long term, and this the reality that you may not be able to afford a house here ever, or the fact that my mom is a public school teacher and has been for the last 24 years, and she also is having trouble with grappling with the idea of home ownership in our district. So it's the idea that people should be able to live where they work and thrive where they live. So and now we have a city that is like kind of usurping the messages around affordable housing, like opportunity zones and housing for all, and taking that to apply to the creation of these luxury apartments that they believe like pricing at a particular spot and offering up these apartments to these people who want this type of housing, because they've done the research and they determined that people moving here want luxury housing priced at $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 plus a month in the city, when many of us are struggling.
I don't know who's making that kind of money even now. And I live in the city of Medicine. I live down the road. We're in the triangle. For those people who may listen to this after, we live in the triangle that everybody always hears about on television: Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. And I don't know who's making that kind of money to pay rent with if you pay rent at that scale, you're not getting any tax credits for that. That's the other piece. So, and unless you own something, you don't even get something back for what you're investing in your property. So it's not sustainable. It absolutely isn't sustainable. And those people who take care of our children, those people that teach our kids, those people that are the uh,
public servants and
well,
public workers, the people who
exactly,
make our city function and run.
right? They can't afford to live here.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that's going to work.
Single family zoning, get rid of it. I think zoning reform is one of the major things that we've seen around the country that has changed in how we develop, right? Like right now, Raleigh has so much of its land as single family zoning. And we know that this comes from the Jim Crow era and like this was meant to segregate communities. So as council, I've seen counselors even like tweet or post on social media about like, books that talk about that, but then have never addressed the fact that like single family zoning is hindering the development of affordable housing here, right? And we've never addressed that. And so I think, also like just talking about the ways that developers are kind of taking advantage of things that were meant to supposedly meant to benefit low income communities like opportunity zones, right? We've seen, we saw downtown South, which was proposed in the poorest part of Raleigh, right? Everyone has ignored that part of Raleigh for centuries. And all of a sudden now it's the closest part of downtown that's not expensive. So we want to build, a soccer stadium or luxury apartments, right? So we're building luxury apartments, not only in that area.
What happened to those people that were living there? They got priced out. So where did they go?
Just across the street, or they became unhoused. Because if you go to Southeast Raleigh, you can see the difference. You can literally see. You don't have to imagine it. You don't have to make theories. You can just go drive to Southeast Raleigh, like right across like Washington Terrace, for example. You can go see the gentrified houses and then walk and then see a whole right there an encampment of displaced residents. Like this is no longer just gentrification. This is genocide, right? Like people are fleeing from the development that's being done that's displacing them, right? Like it's not that it's just like people are selling their houses and they're moving. No, like they're literally getting pushed out. And I think not using stronger language here on the fact of what's happening is a detriment to ourselves, because we're thinking that this is just how things are. But no, in the rest of the world, they describe these types of mechanisms, this type of intentional displacement, as genocide.
Wow. Speaking of this, now in the city of Durham, they have come up with a low income housing relief program. So if you make this year, it's going to be 3 different tiers of AMI where people can apply to it and be able to get some relief on their tax bill. That's one way to deal that for the people who already have homes. So is Raleigh planning on doing something like that? Now, of course, that's on the county side. So I wonder, is Wake County, your county commissioners, talking about doing something like that you would know about from the city council side? Because
Durham, most I've seen is 80% AMI, which is ridiculous. So even affordable housing that the council has set.
Durham's is less than or equal to 80% AMI as well.
I mean, that's also like the federal statistic is 30% is what affordable housing is, 30% of AMI. So the fact that we're using 80%, I'm not really sure where we pulled that from, because it doesn't really make any sense, especially when even different parts of Raleigh, for example, have different AMIs. Like the AMI of Raleigh is around like 86,000, but then of like Southeast Raleigh or the poorer communities around 50,000. So we're not really we don't have any initiatives in place. I think the city makes maybe 300, 400 affordable housing units a year, and we're losing like 3 times that a year. So as of right now, there has been absolutely no strategic investment or urgency in addressing the housing crisis from either the Raleigh City Council or the Wake County Board of Commissioners.
Okay, well, that program it started last year and had some hiccups because it wasn't the income situation wasn't sufficient enough, and this time they believe it will be, and it'll definitely be where people won't get a maximum break of $750. Actually, there'll be 3 different tiers think maxing out at 1,500 or something. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But at least they're trying to do something. But I just know that you cannot have all of this gentrification. And for people that have been living forever in these neighborhoods, one day I was driving, this is just in Durham, and I drove on the street called Gear Street. And I turned around the corner, and all the houses are, they're just average, everyday houses. I turned that corner and I saw this great big, it had to be 4 stories with a garage. And the way the garage was set, it had a big window, like one of those little sleek windows. And you could see it was some kind of fancy car in it, fancy sports car. So so what they had to have done was buy up a couple of the houses next door. So they'd have all that land to build their place, have the garage and some land around it. I mean, and I can't even imagine what those other people's taxes are. I can't imagine. I cannot.
Yeah, it's been dramatic. The changes have been swift and they've been very dramatic. I think back to the first time I ever really thought about gentrification in the city of Raleigh was with the New York Times article from about a few years back, talking about just like the extreme wealth differences between people living in Southeast Raleigh, between some of their neighbors. Like it's like one person's making like maybe $40,000, $38,000 a year, and their neighbor is making 3, 4 times, 5 times that, and their homes are 4 times, 5 times that. And just the taxes are just either making it hard for people to remain where they are, or just like pushing people out of the city. And I think my heart really, like it's important to always center people who are homeowners. I know a lot of people in my district are homeowners, but a lot of people in the city of Raleigh are renters, myself included. I don't own this place, I'm renting it. And so I'm always thinking about the sustainability of like how it is for renters, because half of the people who live here are renting, even down to like even the environmental initiatives that they have around like cutting the cost of energy prices for people, allowing people to have solar homes and creating incentives for that. They're not prioritizing that within the people who are renting and the communities that are renters. It's all homeowners. So, and that's an important demographic. Don't get me wrong, but renting.
Yeah, it's something. Okay, guys. So moving right along, the city council had created a police advisory board, but I understand it's nearly defunct. Police Chief Estella Patterson, she appears to be very transparent. I have been just, of course, just watching on television as she comes on when things happen. She lays it out straight. She appears to be very transparent and straightforward. What will your relationship be with her and the RPD if you were on council? When you become on council?
Well, obviously we know like the defunct means that they have absolutely no power. When community organizing, I worked with Raleigh Demands Justice, was one of the strategic leaders there, and implementing the protests after George Floyd, and also after that calling for demands of the resignation of Chief Deck Brown then, as well as subpoena power for the board. The board was made and created after, I think, citizens asking for it for about 50, 60 years, but it got no subpoena power. The new chief is more open to the board than the previous chief, but the RPD has a culture of resistance to oversight. And, whoever holds the title of police chief should be favorable of oversight. And right now we're seeing that RPD has a history of putting aside the voices of minorities and marginalized communities and planning without them, right? Like this board has no power. Like I had, Greer Webb, who is a co-founder of YAP, was on that board, and we clearly saw how much they weren't even able to do. Like they're not able to hold officers accountable, and they're not able to see, the policies that are being placed. There's a lot of secrets in this police department. We really, it's nice that Chief Estella is like, a little bit more out there in the community, but not really, as much. I'm not really sure. They just increased the police budget, and it's hard to know exactly what's that's going to. And then we speak about Durham, and we speak about the fact that like they were also the fact that like our previous police chief went in and trained in Israel on how to utilize military tactics against citizens. And we saw that in 2020 where expired tear gas was used against residents. I was tear gassed 5 times in those protests. And to the fact that to this day that no one has really done or even like done anything about it other than spend tax money on hiring a consultant to look into it and then say, hey, we did do this, but when we're sorry, and that's it, right? Like these types of things we cannot just let pass by. And it's hard because we as organizers and community builders have been so burnt out by this pandemic that it's hard to know exactly how to hold all of these systems accountable when all of the systems are systems of oppression. I think for me, my interaction with the new police chief has been when she came to North Raleigh Masjid, and I sat there and asked her about the issue of that, the local police departments should not be training with foreign militaries on, how to use military tactics against citizens. And, she just talked about how much she loved Israel and how much that, she would love to go there. And for me as a Muslim woman, as someone who knows the genocide and apartheid that's happening there, it really sucks to hear that from the new police chief as well. So for me, I think my question, again, goes back to establishing a mental health unit that is outside of the police department, because again, we advocated for that. Raleigh Demands Justice, and we specifically advocated for a mental health unit outside of the police department. And what the police department did was make that mental health unit within the police department. And we know that doesn't work. There's already enough research and other places around the country that have tried that and seen that didn't work. And what did work was keeping that separate from the police department. And yeah, it's called Acorns right now. And it's just, it's a mess. It's like taking it's like pretending to hear what the community here said and like literally doing the opposite of what they wanted. But then also the fact of like, what is community policing? Are we changing the culture of resistance? Are we changing the way police officers look at residents? Are we, thinking about the fact that like police officers were meant to serve residents and protect the people first, not to police them and make their lives harder and send them to jail so then the prison systems can make money off of them. So I think changing that culture is very much needed. And right now I'm someone who's less policed by local police unless I get stopped for like a speeding ticket than normal. So I can't specifically say, but I have not heard of any, seeing the police budget raised. I don't believe the actual culture is being changed right now. And so like I would like to see as a city councilor to see what the police chief is doing and changing the culture and reimagining in ways how police officers can benefit the community and work with them, and changing this, dynamic of like not having trust with these departments that are meant to protect us. Because I do think, again, just like we talked about with affordable housing and development, like there's a way to have both. And here there's a way to have both. There's a way for police officers to protect the community from people or things that are harmful to the collective while still not being stereotypical and killing our Black and brown bodies.
Well, I was thinking that when you said that the police chief talked about Israel and all that to you, I thought she really wasn't able to read the room. And I think a lot of things that entails is that people really are not very familiar with diversity and equity and inclusion and history. So it's sort of like there's a kind of ignorance for someone to say something to someone that might find that celebration of Israel and what have you to be, a little off-putting. You know what I mean? That lack of sensitivity. But what I want to know is, do you think it would be possible? Well, she's brand new, pretty much. She's gotten broken in, that's for sure. The crime crime is a problem everywhere because America has just such a proliferation of guns and violence. So I was wondering, would you, as city council people, be willing to have meetings, set up conversations with her to ask some of these questions and to form a relationship? Because I really think if we think of how things used to be and hold them in that regard all the time, we don't give them a chance to evolve and change.
I agree. I definitely think holding meetings is essential, right? Like I'm not going to be a city councilor that's like, I have my views and opinions and I'll bring that to the forefront, but my goal and view as a city councilor is to be able to hold meetings and listen to everyone, especially the police department, that is such an essential priority for a lot of our residents. But I think for me, I would really want to hold on like figuring out what initiatives could be most impactful. And for me, like that's decriminalizing marijuana arrests. Like, I don't know. I think for me, the biggest stance that the police chief could do right now is decriminalizing that and making that less of a priority in the Raleigh Police Department, because it would help so much. Like, I mean, again, we know the benefits of that. And also the state is looking to make medical marijuana legalized, and it's in the Senate right now. So as a police department, we can deprioritize that and let police officers focus on other things like, helping the youth and, reducing crime or violence in the city.
Mary, what do you think? Have you given any thought about any special youth programs or other community projects that would be able to thwart violence in the community? Have you given that any thought?
Well, before we get to that question, I did want to kind of comment on what was being said.
Oh, I forgot about Jeremy's comment.
Not in the chat, just the question in general. But you can.
Sorry.
I can read it. Definitely subpoena power is needed, and we need to end qualified immunity. I was going to talk about that a little bit because I know, again, being somebody on the board, one thing's for certain, two things for sure. Raleigh loves to create a city board and then pretend they're doing something. And I think that is the case here with our policing board. Like they do need power to be able to influence things more than just like make recommendations to the council that the council will or will not take. And as far as the relationship, I think it is for Zainab and I, it's really going to be based on our organizing history. And that is not one where we're constantly just being so revolutionary, where we're just burning things down, but also intentionally focusing on what we are creating and the relationships that we are creating and how we are building this future, and maybe trying other things besides just traditional police force and policing in the ways that it has been done. Maybe creating community policing models that also work to like help with the trauma and the mental health issues and all the deep-rooted issues with poverty and violence and guns that happen across the country, but specifically like within our own communities. Just the opportunity and the willingness to try something different and do something different, I think is what I would want to be interested in trying as city councilor. And as far as community programs, organizational programs, I think it's just more building on the community power that we are both establishing and creating throughout our campaigns. Zainab, who is Zainab? Who is that?
I don't know.
Zainab.
Let me find her. Hey, Zainab.
Who is Zainab? I was trying to say Yap, and it ended up just got combined. So Zainab with Yap, just the potential and the power to build more political engagement opportunities, youth job opportunities, educational opportunities to be able to connect and engage with like-minded people as we're visioning and collectively talking about the future, like giving them a place and a stake in our city, making them believe, because I think that's something I remember. I'm like a little bit old now, like I'm almost 30, but I remember at one point a little bit old. Yeah. A little. It's like I'm getting farther away from being able to really call myself truly like a youth, like in all intents and purposes. But I do consider myself youthful in many ways. And I do remember being a teenager, being even 21 and 22, and feeling like I didn't have much of a stake or a claim in the community that I am a part of, and just engaging myself from that process so that now it's at the point now where I'm 28 and I'm running for office, because it's like you do have a role that is being created, and you do have, like, if we're talking about being the person that you want to be and creating the future that you want to have to do that with intention. So yeah, like engaging more with the communities through the organizational roles that we have, as well as like creating more opportunities for youth to have employment and just opportunities to engage with each other on multiple levels is something I've been thinking about.
Yeah. I am so excited that you all are running, because one problem that I see in our country overall is that, and especially in the Congress, that we do not have enough younger voices in the Congress. And maybe some of our elder congressmen are grooming people to come on up, but it's not fast enough, because some of the crap that we're seeing is just, I'm just so frustrated. And I'm old enough to be your mothers, but I want to see progression, and I want to see, just like when I was younger and your age, I want to see that same type of energy and youth and what have you coming together to form the future. There's no, I don't see the problem with people working side by side, but respecting one another. I don't see where people that are old enough, like I am, to be your parents and not listening to your ideas. I learned so much from my children that it's, unbelievable. But I think that also has to do with, you have to have an open mind about everything.
It's
And
ageism.
yeah, and I'm against all of the isms, racism. I hate it all. And
culture doesn't really respect intergenerational relations. In fact, when you're a young person, you're more likely to hear like you don't know what you're talking about, or like you just feel this way because you're this way. That'll change later on. So oftentimes our opinions, especially as like 90s babies, millennials, Gen Z, millennials, like are disregarded and kind of pushed to the side. So I think, a large part of, I actually met Zainab as working at an organization specifically about getting young women into office. And I was working in the community, creating events. And at the time I was bringing in women in office, or who were running in office, or in politics, to speak to the young women in colleges here during the events. And Zainab was running for office at the time. She was running for mayor. And so it's like, it is very important. I think generationally, I think, as when you talk about women in office, it's very important to talk about pushing more women into office. And I do want to note that I don't think it's necessarily that the younger generations aren't coming together to engage in politics. I just think a lot of us are burnt out. I know in climate spaces, we recognize that a lot of the issues that are happening as far as like the world is just becoming unsustainable for us to live in, they weren't created by our generation. They weren't necessarily created by our parents' generation. They were created by people with wealth who didn't care about what the future had to hold. People who were running the oil companies and the steel companies, and were able to pollute the planet and harm the planet in ways that are unchangeable. So it's just very difficult at times to relatively engage with that when we're just trying to exist and trying to be young and trying to take the life that we were told that we were going to have, and not like have that at all. So, but I think we still persist and we still engage. It's just like figuring out to do it in ways that are actually moving the needle towards systemic equity and justice.
Yeah. And I think it's even important to point out, like, my parents are migrants from Pakistan, but my chances of being in poverty are higher than them. And they came from a, developing country. And that's because of the city I live in. Like, the upper mobility rate in Raleigh is one of the worst in the country. And so the fact is that if you're born poor in Raleigh, your chance of getting out of poverty is little to none. And so I think, taking that back into the fact that like this city is also very young, right? Like the median age is 32 and a half. And, no one in council, I think, is under
that.
Yeah, it's young. It's a very
young.
It's a very young city. That's what I'm saying. Like the power is held in the young people in the city. If they decide to vote, if we decide to vote, like I'm 31 and I consider myself old, yet however everyone's is like, you're not experienced enough to do anything. So like I don't know when I'm gonna get out of
Send all of them to me who say that you two are too inexperienced to do anything. Vehemently disagree. That just makes me sick because they know doggone well that there was a time when they were your age and they were doing different things in corporate America and all that stuff. And people said that to them. And how did they like it? They didn't. And someone had to give them an opportunity. Someone had to give them a chance. And the way our environment is and everything else, I just think it's criminal not to let the younger generation spearhead things because, hey, I'm not gonna say I messed anything up because I wasn't one of them kind of people. But listen, somebody's got to figure this thing out. We've got to figure it out and get it straight. Jeremy, he says, I feel old. I am part of the forgotten next.
I think millennials are Gen X.
They are pretty forgotten. But we still need you. Like I think that's what made out of intergenerational work, Gen X. Yeah.
Yeah, we need everyone. Listen, we need everybody, all hands on deck. Now, I see a Wanda and I see Greer in the background. I don't see their faces or anything. They're not on camera. I can't tell if they want to comment on something. Wanda or Greer, let me know if you want to come up and say something. Or they just must have had the. Do you know who Wanda is? Of course, we know who.
Wanda Hunter is running for District C, and she is the person you should vote for.
Oh, okay. Well, Wanda, do you want to come on stage? I'm gonna add her to the stream.
Yes, Wanda.
Do you want to say anything? You got to unmute yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm Wanda Hunter, and I'm a candidate for Raleigh City Council District C.
Okay, so we got A, B, and C here in the house.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Too bad you're not on camera, Wanda. I won't pressure you. But tell us just a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a Raleigh native and actually a native of District C.
Okay.
And I can go down the line of I remember wins in Raleigh and all of the historic monuments of District C.
What is District C?
District C is the Southeast Raleigh corridor. So
I know that well. I used to be the PR director of the Garner Road Family YMCA.
Yes, so inclusive of that, and going all the way out towards Barwell Road, all those things in the Southeast corridor, and a little bit of downtown.
Okay. All right. Well, I have like I said, I have an affinity for Southeast Raleigh, so I hope that you win sincerely. I sincerely do. Were you ever one of those students that were in Back a Child or any of the programs there at the Garner Road Y?
No, I was not. When I grew up, the mentors then were Miss Shawn Winters and Evelyn Jarvey.
Okay. I know the Gervais family. Yes.
Yeah, so they had an after school program for Southeast Raleigh kids, and I was a part of that. And they also had a group where we were they had a playwright and we did some performances, and it was called NACL Players and Company. And so I was a part of that also.
Okay, very good. I know that ZB has quite a bit of competition. Mary doesn't have as much competition. I kind of memorized you guys' situation. Wanda, how many candidates are in your district running for office?
There's the incumbent and then one other.
And you. So it's just three of you.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's sort of like what yours is too, Mary.
Yeah.
Right? About three.
When the incumbent decided not to run for re-election. So it's two people.
Right. So yeah, because I saw where a lot of well, you had 3 incumbents total, right? That decided not to run, I believe. But then you got some people that are coming back from 30 years ago. Yeah, I read that. Yeah. ZB, you've got a ton of people in that
There's
district.
5. I don't think there's ever been 5 candidates in this district before.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
even filed after I filed, so it's gonna be fun.
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna pull Greer up here. Hey Greer.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Good, good, good. It's so good to see you. And you've been everywhere this summer.
I've been around. I've been around. I was just listening into the show, and thanks for
Mhm.
bringing me on. I just wanted to ask a question, and I can pop back into the background. I wanted to ask both the candidates how their organizing background and any work that they've done with young people is influencing how they're crafting their campaigns. How just the difficulties as an organizer myself of organizing, of holding meetings, of hearing dissent. How is that influencing you into crafting a more inclusive campaign and one that really meets the needs of people who are the most directly impacted? I've heard some of your ideas on policing and housing and the environment, of course, with Mary's background, but I'd love for you all to maybe tie it together and focus on how your specific experiences organizing influence your campaign platforms.
Do you want to go, Zainab? Do you want to?
Well,
Yeah.
I use emojis in my campaign platform, so I feel like that's enough. No, I was kidding. I think, like, for example, like with Young Americans protest, right? Like, I think one of the biggest things that we were able to impact was getting rid of 287G, right? Like being able where our county sheriffs and police department would stop working with ICE on deporting our residents or just having a basic traffic stop and all of a sudden making that a deportation event. And so that happened with the sheriff selection. I've also worked with high school and college groups on making like a Green New Deal for Raleigh, and figuring out how we, integrate both housing and climate together. And so I think for me, it's about getting everyone at the table, like again, holding like how I ran my last campaign was holding events where young people would be at, right? So like being able to go to like just nightly events or places that would be more intriguing for young people versus just being at like the city council room or some like event or place that people can afford. So bringing everyone to the table, being able to craft these platforms together, being able to craft solutions together, but also being able to utilize other mechanisms like protesting or having just more creative spaces that aren't just necessarily like me being like, hi, like vote for me because I'm running for office. It's more like, hey, you're voting for me, but really it's a vote for you because I'm trying to be the person that listens to everyone and brings things to the table, not just someone who like decides to, just bring everything that I want to the table. Because I think for me, it is really about the power of the people and specifically the power of young people in this city, which has almost over 100,000 college students. So I see the power and potential of young people, and I truly, truly believe we literally have the power to overturn and decide the future of this city. We just have to vote and get involved.
We have to get people to vote up and down the ballot.
Agreed. And I think a big part of the organizing experience that I have is one mainly being a digital and online organizer and doing the experience in that way. So meeting people where they are in person, like and showing up as my most authentic self, whether you meet me like doing something political, whether it's a protest or speaking. Hey, I'm Mary Black running for city council. If I'm at a poetry slam event, hey, I'm Mary Black running for city council. If I'm at Boxcar on a Sunday night, hey, I'm Mary Black running for city council. So, and then also with creative forms of digital media, and that's something that Zainab and I have both done, just getting creative with our TikToks, getting creative with how we're engaging people and how we're educating people and bringing people into the conversation of what's taking place in their city. The quote that I like to live by, because it's something they like to say a lot about young people and organizing spaces in general, is just that we just don't care about certain things. It's not that, I like to assume that it's not that people don't care, it's that they don't know. So rather than assuming that they don't care, assuming that they don't know. And how can you meet people and engage with people in that way from that experience and that background when you're trying to, and rather than like working from a place of assuming that they don't care, working from a place of assuming like maybe they don't know about something. So what are the ways that you can be thoughtful about engaging them and talking to them and creating with them and understanding what they want and giving them the autonomy and the self-determination to create and develop their solutions for their communities where they live.
Right.
And I mean, the organizing space, I think, plays such a big role in why I'm running this campaign, because it's strictly based off of the conversations that I've had in communities with people about how we need to be centering more people like Zainab and I and Wanda on city council who are engaging and are eager to engage and have the capacity and the intention to do more with communities, more than just like creating a city board for city engagement or gentrifying the city and pushing people out. Like, what are like people who really are interested in being invested in the members of their neighborhoods and their community, and listening and engaging and being thoughtful about the ways that you are communicating and interacting with those people, and how are you bringing not just your ideas of what the city should be to the table, but the collective vision of people that you've actually talked to in between campaign seasons, because that's usually how it happens. Like, you only hear from people when it's campaign season, and then they disappear until it's the next campaign season.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think people be downplaying how hard it is to, or the skill it takes to engage people in local politics through TikTok or Instagram. And I think that young people, especially like me and Mary and other organizers around here, like Kristen and people, have been able to take this content that is very, very difficult to understand, that they make it very difficult for the average person to understand, and put it out in a way that is both not only engaging but informational. And I think that needs to be recognized as a skill that is specific to young people, because then other campaigns also, end up, taking ideas or stuff from it as well, right? So like, we're not only changing the conversation, we're also changing how people, do their digital strategies or how they influence and talk about things.
Right. Absolutely. Listen, all of you that are listening on YouTube, I hope you do give me a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to make it grow, Jeremy says our generations are in survival mode because of how capitalism has evolved. That makes it hard to pursue our dreams and to attain political power. Thank you all for stepping up. And he brought yet another comment. He says, with 5 candidates in District B, I think ZB would have a good shot at winning with 25 to 30% of the vote. Obviously, the goal is to shoot for much more than that, though. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, definitely is. I'm hoping the name recognition and the work that I've done speaks for itself, and that we're able to win this district.
Right. I certainly, I certainly want you ladies to get in. Wanda, I didn't get to see your lovely face, but if you want to go on camera, please do, and you can show everybody real quick. But I really have enjoyed our conversation, ladies. I think that you all really have your heads on straight. I think you've got great ideas. Oh, there's Wanda. Look at there. She decided to show herself. There she is. Hey,
Wanda! Yay!
I now recognize your face from some footage I saw as I was trying to learn more about you guys. I recognize you now.
She was at our 3-person kickoff event that we had on the.
We all filed together.
Yes, and had a press conference after.
That's what I saw. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I saw that. You had on a yellow dress, Mary.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
I was trying to say, who's that? Yeah, I saw it. Very good. Well, listen, I wish you all the absolute best. Please come back. You have my contact information. Please come back when you win and tell me what you're doing. Let people know what you're doing, because this means everything we have got. I started this channel only because, I had it in my head all along, But I got panicked about it because I said, oh my God, this is the midterms. And in midterms, things get really dicey for us most times, but we absolutely cannot fail this midterm. We cannot fail. This is too consequential of a vote.
Too much is at stake. Absolutely.
Democracy itself is at stake. Let's just say it. It
Life,
is.
liberty, your rights, and everything that they said was wrong about alarmist.
Exactly. And that everybody that's been going to, Georgia no longer has abortion rights. So we're the closest state to them. So here we go. And the only thing that's really held North Carolina together is that we built a wall with our governorship. And we've got to do so much more. That's how we lost the state legislature, was because of midterm election, because people got tired and didn't vote anymore. We absolutely cannot afford that again, ever in life. So people vote up and down the ballot, vote for these ladies, but vote for Mary Black.
Zainab Baloch, November 8th. That's the date.
And Wanda, what's your last name?
Wanda Hunter.
Hunter. District C.
District C. So we've got A, B, and C district ladies here on the screen. So if you hear this back, or if you guys want to play, send this out now, because it'll be recorded forever, so you can do that to use it. I wish you all the very, very best. Do you have anything that you want to say lastly? Anybody? All hearts and minds are clear?
I would just like to say that our livelihood, especially in Raleigh, literally depends on this election. I know people might say that every single election, but this election is very unique. There are community builders and organizers that are running that can literally overturn this council and change the vision for Raleigh to include the people of Raleigh and not just the developers. So I cannot stress enough on how important November 8th is. So if anyone is listening, put it on your calendar right now.
Yes, on your calendar. Mary, anything?
Not really. I would just like to say that today is the beginning of the rest of our lives. So I'm bringing a lot of intentionality into the spaces that we are collectively building, and that is the purpose of the campaign, collective visioning and a collective future that represents all people. So if you don't like that, if you do like that, we're here, and we're going to be here after the election is over, after the campaign is done. We're going to win. So that's all.
Wanda, anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, so I would just like to say, make sure you get out and vote, and don't be intimidated because the challengers have raised so much money. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean anything when people on the ground get out to vote. The people power is what moves elections. Mm-hmm. And we need people power to move these elections so that once people are elected, then we can hold them accountable and do the job that needs to be done in the city of Raleigh.
Absolutely. Well, ladies, it has been a joy meeting you all. Greer, thanks so much for introducing them to me, my friend. And we're going to sign off, and we're going to all wave everybody off the air. All right. Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.